Ah, greetings, my friend. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives, whether we want to or not. And remember, my friend, these future events will affect you. The future is in your hands.
The media said what? The media said Joe Biden's president. Ha 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 ha
in New York, so let's check in with our own Daisy Duke of the CBS hit show The Dukes of Hazzard, Catherine Bach on Times Square. Catherine?
Hi, Paul. Hello. You wouldn't believe this place. Times Square is really jumping. The crowds start gathering a little after 9, and by the time that ball drops, it's going to be wall-to-wall people. By the way, did you know that I was the first lady to do the countdown in Times Square? How about that, ladies? Okay, back to you, Paul.
Ha 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 ha.
It started as a day out, a trip that held the promise of fun and pleasure. But for Rick and his friends, the fun ended early when they landed on Grand Island. Trapped in the Hotel of Horror, they can check out anytime, but they can never leave. What started as a day to remember ended in a bloody new year.
Seeing a screen for the first time of the After. Holy buckets.
Yeah.
No wonder that guy was found in bits and pieces.
He was also a David Icke fan. David Icke. You know that guy? He's a British guy. He comes across as quite sane because he doesn't rant and rave and he doesn't look like he's on coke like Alex Jones does. He speaks very calmly. And like most conspiracy theories, it makes a lot of sense at the beginning. And then as you follow him, you're like, oh, yeah, actually, well, he's tying in different things. And then he gets to the lizard people, which is there's a race of lizard
You're not
people.
going to try and say they aren't real, are you?
Well, I guess we can't really prove one way or the other. But David Icke is very convinced that they are. And you'll see, if you go to YouTube, you can find these videos that people are really so obsessed with this, where they'll take a video from a press conference or something, and they'll find a frame where there's some video noise, which happens in basically every video, right? If there's a little bit of video noise, they'll freeze frame it, and that'll be evidence that it was that somebody's like mid-transformation. Because apparently these lizards, they have human skin wrapped around them, kind of like in Men in Black. Remember Men in Black? When the guy that was... Yeah, it's like a meat. Exactly, they're meat suits, and they can't always control them. So occasionally, you'll catch a little glimpse of them in mid-transformation. Oh.
Are they shapeshifters that they can take human form, or are they just inside meat suits?
I think they're the latter. I don't think they're shapeshifters because a shapeshifter would be able to, I think, at will change their shape. These are lizard people who are wrapped in meat suits, and sometimes they have a little bit of trouble keeping the meat suit stable. So
did you ever watch the newer Teen Wolf series?
The sexy one? No.
Why would you call it the sexy?
Isn't it a sexy one? Isn't it like a sexy Teen Wolf guy and kind of angsty, kind of?
Oh yeah, there's of course there's teenage angst. It turns out, what is his name? Why can't I think of it? I was about to say it. The guy who plays the lead in that is the actor who was the little boy in Made in Manhattan. There's just a little trivia in case you get asked. But there was the...
I'm afraid if anybody asks me about a Jennifer Lopez movie, I don't know if I can continue that conversation.
What sport do they play in the TV series Teen Wolf?
According to Movie Stack Exchange, the Teen Wolf TV show is loosely based in the film of same name where basketball was the essential part of the plot, but in the TV show...
So there's basketball in the movie, though.
This isn't the movie. This is the series. And they play lacrosse in the series. And Tyler, the main kid, isn't that great a player. And his best buddy, Stiles, whose last name is Stalinsky, you don't hear his first name until the last or second to last episode, 7 seasons in. And I didn't hear them say it, so I don't know. But the main kid gets bit, and all of a sudden, if he gets up, his eyes turn yellow, because as it turns out, he's an alpha, which we don't learn until later either. And he becomes this amazing player. Well, Jackson, who'd been one of the stars of the team, wants to know what it is about him, whatever it is he wants, and he kind of starts to figure some stuff out. And so he really wants to get bit. So he tries to set this whole thing up. He got it, but he got something else where he was videotaping it, and then all of a sudden there's just this time lapse in the video that he got rid of, and something bit him, something happened, and he became one of the other things. So he did not get what he wanted.
So this doesn't really have much to do with the movies, right?
It says very loosely based on, no, because these guys they're werewolves and this other thing. There are all kinds of different monsters come in, and he ends up dating this girl who, it turns out, her family is multi-generations of hunters. Well, you can see the conflict there, can't you?
Oh, yeah. Sounds a little like Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Twilight.
Yes.
Sort of. Yeah. Speaking of movies, we're at the end of the year, and I got to say, at the end of 2019, I went on the record saying that this was the worst year of my entire life, 2019, and I can only hope that 2020 will be better.
So you threw the jinx out there.
I suppose I did. But I will say, even though for the world at large, 2020 is probably the worst year, but all things considered, I'll pick 2020 over 2019. It was a lousy year. My mother died, for one thing. I had a psycho roommate that stopped paying me rent, so I had to go through housing court for 8 months.
Yes.
In New York to evict the guy, which made me lose my apartment and become quote unquote homeless. I'm not homeless because I have a roof over my head, but I do not have a home. And then COVID hit. I lost my job. I'm still unemployed because my line of work is not open. Blah, blah, blah. All things considered, though, some good things happened to me this year. And I think, as far as the win-loss column, I would take this year over last year. Marginally. I'm probably the only idiot who would say that. That said, I'm really, really glad that 2020 is ending. Not that one day makes any difference on the calendar.
Oh, but it does.
Symbolically, I'm glad we can finally put this one to rest. So, speaking of movies, what was your favorite movie this year?
I think, did I even go to the theater?
Well,
here's the thing.
No.
Most of our, except the Joyo and Mary Ritma Ross, which is down on the university that has the fantastic films. Everything is owned by Marcus, and you can buy the popcorn bucket at the beginning of the year for X amount of money, and then you can bring it back each time, and it's $4 for a large popcorn, plus you get a free refill. And so Kenny and I would always do that, and we would go to quite a few movies. So we got we did. We got a new popcorn bucket for this year. Went to 2 or 3. I couldn't eat, and then everything. I know that I went to a few movies this year, but I couldn't tell you which ones were this year.
When did the theaters close? Because the theaters
know.
in New York closed in March, and they have not been open since then. So
don't know. I remember Ad Astra or something like that. Was that this calendar year?
I think that was last year. I'm thinking in terms of Academy Awards. That's how I think of years.
I'm thinking January.
I think that would have been eligible last year and not this year.
They put movies in the awards that haven't been mass released anymore.
Correct. Well, the rule used to be...
the people don't vote, it doesn't matter what we think.
Right. Well, you have to be an Academy member. The rule used to be that a film had to play 7 consecutive days in New York and Los Angeles prior to December 31st. So what a lot of distributors will do is they'll four-wall a theater, which means they rent the theater. It's not a regular exhibition. They rent it for the week so that it can play, and they don't put any advertising out. But it has to play in order to fulfill the rules. Now, of course, with all New York theaters being closed, they have amended the rules, so that is no longer the case. So everything basically that's streaming is going to be eligible. Everything from Trolls 2 to I don't know what else is eligible. That kind of changes things. But yeah, in the past, it's always been pretty easy for me to make a 10 best list, and this year I don't think I've seen 10 films. Even if I put the worst ones on there, I don't think there's 10.
I have watched more series, just honest to goodness gracious, binged like it was going to come off the streaming series the next day or the next week. Mm-hmm. And I must see them all. So I finally finished The Haunting of Bly Manor. Having watched The Haunting of Hill House when it first came out, and that is so good. I started Bly, and I was in the second episode, and someone else I know who had watched it, that had watched Hill House, really was talking about how bad it was. And so that kind of turned me away for a little while, and I thought, let's see for myself. And someone else who had not watched The Haunting of Hill House, who had watched Bly Manor, was talking about how good it is, or good it was. So I thought, let's just finish it out. So I binged the heck out of that one and got to the end. It was a surprise ending. I will say that it does have a lot of twists to it. There are some things that annoyed me, but I didn't see the ending until, was it in the final episode that something happens that leads you to it? You don't know if it will go that way or not. So, you got a few hours on your hands. It might be worth the watch.
And that's on Netflix.
Yes.
What about, did you ever watch Tiger King? Are you the one American who never did?
Yeah, we watched one episode a week for a while, and my son didn't even watch the final one. I watched it just to see where it ended. I think my interest had pretty much waned in it. He was crazy. Carol killed her husband, and I feel sorry for the animals.
Yeah, they're all pretty much crazy. Do you remember Rick Kirkham, the guy he was the producer of, he's the first guy we see in the show.
Yeah.
He was a producer. Well, I'm friends with Rick, and I've known him for years, and I remember his postings on Facebook when he took this job, and which was to do a reality show based on Joe Exotic. This is long before any murder plot or anything that happened in the movie, but I was following his story and thinking, wow, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on here. And then when it burned, well, spoilers, when there was a big fire at Joe's compound that was very suspicious, I remember reading about that and how Rick was just devastated. Anyway, cut to April, May when it came out, and I was like, oh my God, they did a whole show about this. And I was totally captivated. I binged it twice. That's how captivated / bored I was.
Well, it really was all the rage.
It was, totally was. And I think Rick probably comes across as the most sane of all those people.
How much therapy did he need afterwards?
He's gone through some interesting times. We worked together on television in the 90s. He worked on a show called Inside Edition, and I worked on a show called Rolanda, and we taped in the same studio. Yep. We shared studio space and office space, and so I got to know Rick. This was when Bill O'Reilly, of course, was the anchor.
I thought about saying his name, and then I did.
Rick
that little peach
definitely
of a
worked
fella.
Rick worked with Bill a lot more than I did. I never actually worked with him, but I did have a little running joke with him, which was the first time I saw him. I'm just a genial kind of guy, and I said hello to him. One morning, I happened to walk by his desk, and he was sitting cross-legged on top of his desk for some reason, pretending like he was holding court. And I just said good morning, and he just stared at me. Didn't acknowledge. He looked me right in the eye, as if to say, you're not worthy of speaking to me.
Don't speak to me, you lesser being.
Thank you. I took that as a challenge. And so every morning, I would greet him in an even cheerier, bright tone. Good morning, Bill. And he just seethed. Because I wasn't, in the first place, he wasn't in a position to fire anybody.
You said his name? You had the audacity to address him by his first name? You didn't even say, Mr. Riley, sir?
Oh, no. He was universally loathed, I will tell you that. Everybody hated him.
GY.
Yeah, he earned it. But anyway, Rick's a good guy, and he's living in Norway now. He moved to Norway, and where it's dark like 8 months of the year, which is really crazy. But God bless him, he's married, seems to be living the life, and he has really lived a life. If you get a chance, there's a documentary called TV Junkie about him.
Oh.
Yeah, and this is how I lost touch with Rick, and then I happened to stumble across this documentary. I didn't know what the title TV Junkie, I'm thinking, oh, it's a guy, some fat kid who's addicted to watching television. This should be pretty entertaining. Turns out it was actually about Rick, who had a big crack cocaine problem, and it ruined. He lost basically everything, his career, marriage, everything out of it. And as I'm watching it, not knowing how it ends, I'm thinking, well, obviously he's going to die in the end, because it looked like he was spiraling, and he doesn't die. And I was so happy that I immediately looked him up, sent him a message saying, look, Rick, I just saw this movie, amazing, so glad it didn't end the way I thought it was going to. And we've been friends ever since, and he's a wonderful guy. So There you go. Yeah, so that's my Tiger King story.
Will they ever catch Carol?
I kind of think, I don't know, I hate to go out on a limb like this, but I kind of think that that was an angle for the movie more than.
You really don't think she? I think she killed her.
Who knows? She could have
fed him to the kitty cats.
It's a pretty convenient story, and I like that story, but I have seen. I read from other sources that.
Where is that first husband?
Well, he was a pretty shady guy. I mean, everything was pretty shady about their situation. I think he met her when she was possibly, not to get libelous here, but she was possibly a streetwalker, because that's the rumor, based on where he picked her up. And there was also like a 30-year difference in the age and whatever. Hey, whatever. It's an entertaining story. I think it's really.
Yes, but where is he?
Where is he? He's dead. He's got to be dead. He's probably wherever Jimmy Hoffa is.
I don't think Carol killed Jimmy. She may have.
She may have. We don't know.
No, we don't. And we never will.
But
this is funny. Jim Gray, I want to say is his name. I saw him on a news program this morning. He's been a news reporter for decades, and I do not know the title of the book verbatim, but it's about interviews talking with GOATs, greatest of all time, and it's Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, just that whole list. Pick your sport. I don't know if Pele's in there or not.
You don't mind if I edit Tom Brady's name out of that list, do you? Just a personal thing.
Leave his name.
All right.
Because he wrote the foreword anyway. And before the Trump Tard was president, he had played golf with them once or twice, and they were playing in New Jersey one time. But he was talking about how, we're going to call him Donald, asked if he was, Tiger Woods. These guys included. The best golfer he'd ever golfed with. Well, no, I've golfed with Tiger Woods. So am I the best golfer you've ever golfed with in this, above the age of 60? Well, no, I've golfed with Arnold Palmer. And he said, Trump just going down the list and kept going and going. Am I the best? Am I the best you've ever? And it was no. So finally, I'm the best the best guy you've ever golfed with in New Jersey. And Jim Craig was like, I'd never golfed in New Jersey before. So yeah, you are. And he said it was just so he could say that he was the best at something. It didn't matter how far he had to go. And that's kind of like saying, I won the beauty pageant, and you're the only one in it. What else is going to happen? You also got
everyone
last
else.
place.
I finished second. Everyone else tied for first.
Yeah.
Wow. It sounds like an Office sketch. It sounds like a sketch, like a bit from the TV show The Office.
I was just watching that today.
Now, isn't that leaving Netflix soon? Wasn't that a big controversy?
Yes. The channel that aired it originally is going to have their own streaming service, and so it will move over there. But isn't Peacock supposed to be free, that new streaming service for that channel?
I have no idea. Is that the NBC streaming?
Is NBC the Peacock?
As far as I know.
And yes.
But I mean, that wouldn't preclude another company from calling itself Peacock, would it? Or would it? Maybe it would.
I think, they use the symbol. I've never known which is ABC, CBS, and NBC by, obviously the letters, but by the Peacock or anything that any of the others may have. I got nothing.
Well, CBS is the I.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, NBC is the Peacock. And then ABC is Charlie's Angels, I guess.
I don't think so.
So there's going to be, in a year's time, there's going to be, 10 different streaming services. And they're all going to be $9.99 a month, right? So all the people who cut the cord with cable are going to be back to paying $167 a month for the same worthless channels, right? Isn't that what's going to happen?
I don't know.
I think it will.
Well, I know that our cable company is not good. It's who we get cable and internet through. And you'd think between my son and myself, we may as well be techs on the payroll for the internet. And cable on one TV goes out all the time. It's disastrous. And you get, if you think about it, the cable package, you pay $75, $100 for a certain package that may have 4 channels that you want. And then they know, I don't know what research they read around here, if they check your own. And with every additional package, there's just 2 or 3 channels that you want. And so by the time it's done, you've added on 4 just to try and watch the 10, 15 channels that you watch on a normal basis. It's highway robbery, I tell you.
The last time I was paying for cable, I think it was $167 a month. And that was just cable and Wi-Fi, I guess. Phone not included. That was cable. Yeah, cable and Wi-Fi, and that was it. $167 a month.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And really, the only reason I had cable was because my son wanted to watch wrestling live. That was really the only because everything I've adapted already to a post-cable life. Anything I want, I will find it through a different means rather than cable. So that was a pretty expensive. But then, everybody thought, oh, Netflix is going to be the thing, and everybody will go there, and it'll be $10 a month or $12 a month or whatever. Made everybody happy. But then, of course, all the distributors, the studios, said, oh, wait a second. Instead of licensing our stuff to Netflix and getting 10% of the profits, we can get all of the profits by starting our own streaming service. But what that's going to do is it's just going to drive people away because nobody's going to want all of those. Nobody's going to want Disney and then NBC streaming and CBS streaming and HBO streaming and whatnot. Put them all in one place and people will pay for it. That's
And Hulu.
And Hulu, thank you, which is now part of Disney, I think.
Apple TV.
Thank you, Apple TV. It's just who's gonna fall for this? They're just creating another generation of pirates, is what they're doing.
Let me see what all I see. Discovery Go. We have Roku.
Do you have Disney? Disney Plus, rather?
No. Sling, Vudu. And there's more. That's plenty. My friends have all kinds of apps at this point.
Are they happy with what they have, or are they?
I would imagine so. I think if not, they'll filter out if they decide they don't need anything. But you know, it is that thing. If there are 1 or 2 shows on this one service that you really want to watch, and that's the only means you have to get it, is it worth $7.99 a month?
I think not. I think I have to take a couple of minutes here to talk about WW84. I assume that you have not seen this yet.
Wonder Woman 84.
No.
Oh, WW.
On-screen title is WW84.
But that's what it means.
No, that's the title. The title is written in stone.
But that's what it means. I'm not saying that's what it is. That's what it means. That's what it stands for.
I agree with you, but here's... Okay. First of all, okay, I know theaters are closed, but if theaters were open, would anybody walk up to a box office and say, I'd like 2 tickets for WW84? No. They're saying Wonder Woman 2. So call it that.
Wonder Woman 84 is what?
But it isn't the 84th in the series. So it isn't. If it was, I wouldn't see it because I haven't watched the first 83. I wouldn't even know what the hell was going on.
Is that what it's supposed to mean, or is that the year? Or
is 84 a year?
1984, you were there.
It doesn't say 1984. It says 84. My point is...
We don't know. Maybe it's code for something. I wouldn't say Wonder Woman 2 because I didn't go to Wonder Woman 1.
Well, but if you were buying a ticket, wouldn't you...
No, I would say Wonder Woman 84.
You would? Yeah.
All
right.
That's WW Wonder Woman 84's in the title.
That's only the 7,000th least stupid thing about the movie, though. So I'll give you that one. I'm not going to die on the hill of making fun of the title, but oh my God, this is the worst movie of the year. I will go out on a limb here and say it's the worst movie of the year.
So you've seen the movie?
I've seen the movie. I'm not just saying this too. I actually watched Bill and Ted's 30 Years Too Late Cash Grab, which was the worst movie of the year. This is worse than that. This is even worse than that. It fails on every single level. I could talk for hours about why it's bad. I'm not going to, but just... Name it. You name it. Everything is wrong with it. The CGI looks cheap.
Oh, seriously?
Oh, it does. I actually tapped out after 11 minutes, but then I went back to it because I said, I got to watch the whole thing. After 11 minutes, I was like, it's cheap CGI. It looks like a video game. And I'm thinking,
that's shocking.
This cost $200 million to make. Why?
Surprising.
Why I could do this on my computer. It seemed like everything was shot in front of a green screen, even scenes that didn't need to be shot in front of a green screen. Two characters talking to each other with a background which they could have easily built, but instead it's cheesy green screen. If it's a cheap movie,
when did they film the movie?
I think it was wrapped before COVID hit, actually. Principal photography, at least. I think all the special effects or the unspecial effects took longer.
Well, because that could have made a difference if it was filmed during the time of COVID and without a whole lot else going on. They were able to edit in a much faster time frame.
I see what you mean. Yeah, no, my understanding is you can't blame COVID for any of this. This was all done pre-COVID.
Can't hold COVID responsible?
Not for this one. Oh, the plot makes absolutely no sense.
No spoilers.
And I feel like spoiling. They spoiled me. Why can't I spoil them? Okay, I'm good at avoiding spoilers.
We'll
so basically, the plot
wasn't the movie wasn't to your liking.
It's a little more than
because someone else may watch it and decide this is the most fantastic thing I've seen in the last 6 months.
That's fine. That's fine if they're 6 years old. But it really is not made for adults because the plot revolves around a stone. Okay, that's like a wishing stone that can basically whoever holds this stone can make wishes and they come true.
So it's kind of better than a genie because with a genie you only get 3 wishes, but the stone, do you get unlimited? Well,
no, it isn't unlimited. It's the person who holds the stone makes a wish, and then anybody that he touches or she, I guess in this case it's a he, were to touch. So if he were to put his hand on your shoulder and say, "Mary, what do you wish for?" Whatever you wish for, it comes true. So what happens? Well, without spoiling anything, here's what doesn't make sense.
You're giving away too much.
No, I don't think so. That's kind of.
And I don't have my popcorn.
Well, okay. So he says, "I wish," and then he also explains to us because we're not going to understand otherwise. So he says it only works if I say a wish. I can't say I hope this happens or I pray this happens. So now we've decided that it speaks English, so it has to be the word wish.
The stone is speaking, or he who holds the stone?
Well, the stone must only interpret English because the guy has to say, "I wish." He can't say, "I hope this happens." Whatever. Gotcha. So whatever it is in the stone only responds to the word wish. Now, at a certain point, other people from other nations, this spreads like wildfire, and other people are making wishes. Now, they're speaking different languages. So how does it work? Okay, we'll let you think about that one for a while. But
that got you frustrated.
It doesn't make any sense. It's one thing, okay, I'll follow any logic, but you got to hold yourself to it. If your logic for this movie, people can fly.
Suspended disbelief.
You can't just, in the middle of it.
How many times do you have to, that's part of going to a movie and watching some shows, is going in and thinking, okay, suspended disbelief, roll with it. And if you can, you can. If you can't, sometimes they ask way too much.
Well, but there has to be an internal logic that you're asked to. I will suspend my disbelief insofar as, okay, she's a superhero. Okay, I get that. And she has superpowers, and here's what the powers are. No problem with that. Then when you put her in a tight situation, and suddenly she remembers she has another power that was never addressed, that's just really shitty writing. You paint yourself into a corner, and you don't know how to get out of it. So it's like, oh, you know what? I can make things invisible. Well, why didn't that come up earlier when you really could have helped? So, first of all, why does Wonder Woman have an Israeli accent? Explain that one to me.
Because she is.
She doesn't come from Israel. She comes from wherever.
She fought in the Israeli army.
Did she?
Yes, she did.
Well, the actor did, but I mean the character. I don't mean...
That's how she speaks?
Superman speaks English. And that makes sense because...
Wow, this is really bothering you, isn't it?
He came from a different planet, but he was raised in Kansas by Americans who speak English. So, of course, he speaks English. No problem there. Thor, he's not Australian, but he's from Asgard, and they speak like Shakespearean there, so I'll buy that, maybe. But Israeli, why? Why would she have an Israeli accent?
I don't know. You brought up Chris Hemsworth again. What am I supposed to do?
Well, a day without a Hemsworth is just... a conversation without the Hemsworths is a conversation not worth having.
Amen.
I will say, however, that you were correct in your pronunciation of her name. Apparently, I've been calling her Gadot all this time, as in waiting for Gadot. And it's actually Gadot, which it looks like it shouldn't be. But you were correct. I was incorrect. So there you go on that. We're even?
Why would he be even?
I don't know. I just like to clear the...
Oh, no. That's just another point for me.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope someone's keeping track.
Buddy is.
Buddy
Believe me,
is,
it's not looking good for you.
Well,
not
okay.
that Buddy would play favorites, but he might.
I don't have any chance of getting in there. If I'm
Probably
a distant, if I'm somewhere in the top 30 with Buddy, I'll be pretty pleased. I'm not pushing for that top spot. It's impossible. No. I will say this though, on the opposite end of the spectrum, WW84, the worst movie of the year, my favorite movie of the year is a movie called Swallow. You know about this, or have you seen this? It's an indie, I guess. I forget who distributed it. It is not a horror film, but it's a psychological. It's a movie about a young woman who's recently married, and her husband's obviously a dick, and she's kind of in a loveless marriage or whatever. She starts swallowing things. Now, this is a real condition that people have.
Yes.
Okay, I don't remember what it's called, but it has to do with, I think, her loss of control. So she starts swallowing little household objects like a marble, paper clip, things like that, and it sort of escalates. It sounds like it's a horror film. It's not. It's really a study of this woman.
It doesn't sound like a horror. Wow, I sounded very disagreeable today. No, it sounds
twisted, doesn't it? Like really, like a
the psychology. What was that Jennifer Lopez movie?
You're on your own on this one.
Where she's got the abusive husband and they have the daughter, and she leaves and she actually trains and then sets up this whole thing, and her really good friend, who is played by Drew Barrymore, takes the daughter and they go on a little trip, and she gets into the house, but she has been training and she lived in this house, and she closes her eyes and goes through every step. Back one step, spin 45 degrees up the steps, and she knows where he hides his gun and everything else. So she gets into the house early and hides the gun, gets her, all the guns, everything. I don't remember how many he has exactly. Writes a letter and puts it in his desk, apologizing and about everything or whatever, admitting to everything he's done. And then he comes home and she pummels him and he ends up perishing. And then she goes to the airport and picks up her daughter. The friends come back. What is that? But yeah, that's a psychological thriller.
I think the only thing that I have ever seen her in that I could bear to watch again would be
Gigli?
Out of Sight. Oh no. Out of Sight. You ever see that one? Steven Soderbergh, George Clooney. It's based on an Elmore Leonard novel.
I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, I think she was kind of just starting out, trying to break into the movie business.
After
it didn't
Selena?
do well at the box office.
Not as well as Gigli?
Well, Gigli is one for the ages. I'm not a Kevin Smith fan anyway, so it's possible that it's not even my least favorite Kevin Smith movie as far as that goes. So Swallow, just to finish, Swallow is really beautiful. It's shot, the art direction, the set direction is so gorgeous. Acting is really top notch. This woman, I forget what her name is, but she's really, really good. It's also directed by a woman, first-time director. I would say that's probably my favorite film of the year. Although last night I watched Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and that one's pretty close. That's a really, really, really good film based on an August Wilson play. It's very theatrical. Chadwick Boseman, remember him? Now I gotta say,
who doesn't?
Yeah, I gotta say the Black Panther movie was good and everything, but I don't think we ever really saw him act in the movie, insofar as it's a superhero movie. Watching him in this, and so I have to say, when he died this year, obviously I knew it was a big deal and it certainly affected people, but it didn't really affect me emotionally because I thought, oh well, it's Black Panther. Then I saw this movie and he is so amazing in this film, and it really hit me that this is a huge loss. This guy could be, I want to see him on stage right now. That's how good he is. I want to see this guy.
He also played Jackie Robinson and one other historical figure in more recent movies. His range is phenomenal.
I'm totally surprised because I'd only seen him in Black Panther, which, again, he's fine, but it didn't make me think, oh, this guy is just an amazing talent.
Would it have been that good if someone else had played that role? And sometimes that's the trick to it, that they just do it well enough that it just is.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that somebody else could have played that role, definitely. I think someone could have played any of the superhero roles. I don't think that Robert Downey Jr. owns the role of Iron Man. I can think of 5 people off the top of my head who would be just as good. Tom Cruise, for instance, would be fine. Yeah, as Iron Man?
No.
Kevin Kline 20 years ago would have been perfect.
That's 20 years ago. Actually, make it 30. And I say that because Iron Man's been around, so if you want to go from the beginning, you'd have to take it back farther than 20.
Well, both of those guys were considered for Iron Man before.
Tom Cruise, no.
I think Tom Cruise is a good actor. Nuts,
It isn't
crazy.
on a very shallow level. He would have looked really awful in the suits. He's not built for it. I don't see him owning the part the way Robert Downey Jr. does. For me, it wouldn't have worked.
Okay, fair enough. Honestly, I don't think there's any actor in a superhero film who I would say nobody else could play that part. Absolutely nobody else could play that part.
But is it the best person for the role playing it? I mean, let's go back to Chris Hemsworth and Thor. Who else?
At the time, I was critical of casting him because he was way too young. And I understand the reason they did that is because their plan is to make movies for the next 12 years. So they want someone who's going to stay looking the same age. I think he was way too young. As far as Thor in the comics, the guy was probably in his 40s, or felt like he was in his 40s rather than his 20s.
Jason Momoa is Aquaman. Just his eyebrows, just the look he has, fit it really well.
Sure, but I don't...
Oh, there's that word. Who else would you have? But I think for the viewing public, and you come at it from a different perspective. You've worked in the industry more than your average viewer who goes to a movie.
Well,
and there has to be selling points.
I think I was thinking of it more as a comic book fan. And this is a thing that I feel very strongly about. And maybe I shouldn't, because who really cares? But when you're casting a character that is already well known, character that's really well known through books, through comic books, especially with comic books, you've got the drawings too, so we know what they look like. So that's my frame of reference. I grew up reading Superman comic books. So you show me a movie with Superman, it's got to look just like that guy, or it's not Superman. That's number one.
Like Tom Cruise's Lestat, who was supposed to be 6'2", 6'3".
Right, totally miscast. Totally. I didn't read the book first, so I wasn't attached to anything.
They were very big in my circle at the time.
This thing keeps coming up too with the idea of Idris Elba being the new James Bond. Of course, it's never going to happen. Frankly, it's never going to happen just because there's way too much money involved. They're never going to take that risk. Because literally, it's not a good thing to say, but they would lose a lot of business.
But why? I don't care.
Because people wouldn't see a movie with a black Bond. That's just, they wouldn't. And from their perspective, it's all about money anyway.
Who are they?
Moviegoers. Moviegoers are used to...
There isn't anybody
I know
who would be bothered by it, I don't think. I mean, let's be honest, if it's most of the women I know, if you find your Bond attractive and you think he can play a suave character, everything that just is the character of James Bond, I mean, he's looked different enough just in pale people. Nobody I know would care.
Well, the internet definitely would care. The internet cares about everything. So anybody who's cast as Batman gets run through Brie Larson got run through the ringer because of... So beyond that, what's important to me is that you honor the source material. And in this case, forget the movies, but in this case, Ian Fleming wrote books about this guy who is and he describes him as a white guy. He is a white guy. That means he's not a woman. That means he's not a person of color. That means he's not a child. That means he's not Siamese twins. So you can't cast any of those people without going against his intention.
Annie, you remember how they did the remake of Annie?
Oh, that was horrible.
I didn't see it, but whoever has control of those rights and truly is looking out for the better interests, sometimes we've got to be able to evolve a bit. Now, if they really tried to mutate the character into something completely different than what the character stands for, then there's an issue for me. But if you're just changing his appearance up a bit to appeal or to give other people an opportunity to have that experience and see themselves in that experience, then I'm fine with it. As a matter of fact, sometimes it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing.
What about a female James Bond?
If it would be, again, that's not being true to the character of sorts. You want to make a female character that fits those qualifications and those knock yourself out. I mean, unless if you are working with whoever holds the rights to Ian Fleming's work at this point, and you want to try and base it very strongly on that character, you should work with them. If you just want to take the concept, I'm fine with that too. I'm a Bond fan. I mean, that's trying to own that's not a genre, but trying to own that type of identity of a character can't really be done, to my knowledge.
Well, there's nothing stopping any studio from creating a new super spy and have him black and cast Idris Elba, and he can be the baddest spy in the world, but he's not James Bond. That character is a certain thing. Peter Parker is not black. Miles Morales I don't know if you're into Spider-Man, but you can have a black guy put on the Spider-Man costume, and he's Spider-Man, but he's not Peter Parker. Peter Parker is a white man. You can't have anybody else. He was a white teenager. That's how he was written and drawn. That's just how it is.
I see where you're coming from.
They weren't racist by making him a white guy. That's just who he is. So make a different guy, have him put on the costume, boom, Spider-Man's black. But Peter Parker is not. I know I said that 3 times. To me, it seems pretty easy. And I know a lot of it is do-gooderism. We're embracing diversity. But the thing is, diversity is important if it isn't forced. And to me, that's forced. Casting Michael B. Jordan as the Human Torch in the Fantastic Four movie was a big mistake because the character is not black. And in fact, he's the brother of one of the other Fantastic Four, who is white. So by casting him black, they had to rewrite the movie and throw a line in there how he's adopted. Why? Why not just make it the way we know what the guy's supposed to look like? Why not? Apparently, this is not a very popular opinion.
No.
I'm seeing a lot of people, whenever I bring this up, I get a lot of pushback. And I think it seems to be that, well, diversity is more important than... Diversity is fine, but don't force it. There's no reason to force it into places where it doesn't belong. And now you've got this year, I don't know how this is going to play out, but the Academy Awards, have you heard that they changed the rules up in the interest of quote-unquote diversity? So there's a checklist now that films have to go through in order to qualify. So that means a film like Reservoir Dogs, which is all white guys, because it's a story about white guys, that wouldn't be eligible now.
For best movie?
Yeah, that's my understanding, is that there has to be a certain percentage of the cast has to be people of color, and a certain percentage of the behind the camera crew, which that has nothing to do with the film.
The Hood wouldn't qualify then either.
No, it would, because they're not white. They can't be white. One person of color, I think, automatically makes it eligible. Now, I'm probably leaving something out. There might be some other detail here, but it'll be interesting to see Mank, for instance. Mank is a good movie, really good movie, David Fincher. It's about the writing of Citizen Kane. Of course, everybody's white in this movie because there weren't any black people involved in the story. The writers weren't black, the actors weren't black, so it's all about white people because it takes in the 40s in Hollywood. Of course, it's all white people. Does that mean it just makes me crazy?
No, that rule might deserve a little review.
And again, you could make another award, an award for diversity if you want to. The Godfather wouldn't win, wouldn't be eligible.
If it's for one group, it needs to be for every group.
Yeah, it's like an overcorrection of the problem. There's definitely a problem.
Well, it can't just be for one ethnic group. If it can't be all one shade, it can't be any one other shade and still be acceptable. It's got to be an across the board rule.
Good point. I mean, you look globally, the Chinese are really underrepresented in Hollywood. According to their numbers, there aren't any Chinese stars making Hollywood films. Jackie Chan, for a little while, was, but now he isn't.
Henry Golding, Asian, but I don't know if he's Chinese or... And then, what's his name? Comedic actor was a doctor. It was in The Hangover 2, 3, 4, 7.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, I hate that guy. I don't hate him, but
he's a judge.
So annoying. Henry Golding is Malaysian and British, according to Wiki. Here's another example. Rami Malek, who won the Oscar, right, for Bohemian Rhapsody. He has been cast in a new movie where he's playing an Egyptian pharaoh. Oh, the internet exploded when that was announced because playing an Egyptian pharaoh and he's white. This is an outrage. Well, it turns out, A, he's Egyptian. So I think if anybody's
he's already
qualified,
done so in Night at the Museum too.
There's that too. And
he's already been cast in that type of role.
And C, perhaps even more important than that, is that recent DNA findings show that the Egyptian pharaohs were probably more Middle Eastern than African, as far as that goes. So the shade of their skin could have been a wide range of hues. So it's just people get angry and upset and outraged about the stupidest things like that. Okay, enough of that rant. So you know what was looking...
So will there be much celebration in New York City this New Year's? How are they going to handle the big fat ball drop?
Good question. My understanding is they had some sort of a lottery system, and they're going to allow 100 people into the Times Square area to watch the ball drop. Why anybody in their right mind would want to be in that place in a non-pandemic year baffles me. Do you know that I think since 9/11 this has been the case, that everybody gets packed into this little 1-2 block square area, and once you go in, the rule is now you cannot go out.
Mm-hmm.
That means you're standing there maybe 14 hours because people get there really early in order to get a good spot. So you're standing there for 14 hours, usually in freezing weather. For what?
One of my brothers went once just to have the experience. He wasn't out there that long at all. But the news around is that people actually wear adult diapers.
Sure.
I figure if the astronauts can do it, if they're not too good, standing on the street, people are not either.
You would have to. You'd be stupid not to. But why would you put yourself through all that so you can tell people that you want? Just tell people anyway. Nobody's going to know.
But some people want. To some, it's a big deal because it isn't to you. They get to see how many live performances, and it's not anything I'm going to do.
Well, even the live performances aren't live; they're just lip syncing.
But they're still saying, "Mr. Negative Nelly." Say something positive.
Factor.
Say something positive.
Positive.
Because it's been an egg fest.
It has been. Well, we haven't even gotten to deaths
and I'm
yet.
Exhausted.
I was looking through the list because, of course, everybody who does a show of any sort has to kind of review the year and let's look back on what happened this year. One thing, obviously, is notable deaths because doesn't it seem like it was years ago that Kobe Bryant died?
No.
That was just before the pandemic hit.
It was early in the year. It doesn't. He's actually one of the guys interviewed in that book as well. No, and I recently saw his name and likeness on a program, and you just think this year, how tough that had to have been. She lost her husband and eldest daughter, and these other 3 girls lost their father and their eldest sister, their big sister, and trying to maintain, and then being cut off from family. You know, your extended family can't come for the holidays. Yikes.
No, I remember, not being a basketball fan, I can't say it actually hit me in any way, really, other than because he was so young. People around me were literally crying. People I knew, people I worked with, were literally bawling when this happened. And so I'm not going to say, oh, grow up. It's like, if it affects you, then it obviously affects you. Just because it doesn't affect me doesn't matter. But I'm trying to think of somebody whose death this year really, really affected me. And I'm looking at this list, and Eddie Van Halen, I suppose. I used to be a really big Van Halen fan, but to be honest, what has he done in the last 20 years, really?
Wow, you're harsh today, dude.
I don't mean that. What I mean is, it's one thing when somebody is taken away at the height of their career, and you're left to think, what could have been? But with Eddie Van Halen...
he was still doing some good music, and the man could play guitar. He was still playing and writing new music.
Yeah, he absolutely was.
He wasn't out on the tour circuit that you attended or that I attended. They were still out.
Sure. He also was, from everything I've heard from many different sources, not a very nice guy. So that might have affected my feelings too. It was a surprise, but it wasn't like, oh wow, can't believe. I should say Chadwick Boseman, when he died, that was a huge surprise.
That was a blow.
Came completely out of the blue. Like, what? We didn't know he was sick.
Do you think that this year and everything that has transpired has made you, and I don't want to use the term harder because I don't mean the term harder as far as emotionally, but this year being so trying for people that we all have so many real life things that tug on our emotions, that something that isn't directly related to us is not going to have the same effect that it might have in 2018?
It's a good question.
And I say, from my perspective, yes.
Mm-hmm.
There's been so many real life challenges that's where the focus is, and that's where the energy is, that's where the emotion is, that something so far outside of ourselves isn't going to have the impact that it would at a different time.
I think I agree, although I can also think of maybe somebody who if they died today, I would be affected by. I think there are people that would be so shocking. I'm also used to, as you get a little older, you sort of get used to people dying, especially celebrities and people that you follow and are inspired by. But I can think of a few people whose sudden death would really probably rattle me. So I don't know if it could just be that. Kirk Douglas, 100 years old. How upset can you be? I'm sorry. His family obviously were upset when he died, but is 100 years old. He's not going to, I don't know, he's not really a force in your life anymore. But probably the most notable death of the year that we didn't mention is RPG, as far as
it's true.
repercussions. And I mean, that was shocking, but it shouldn't have been so shocking because she was not that young.
Well, it was the health issues.
Yes.
I think there was the persona and the fact she had overcome so much for so many years, and she wanted to make it through February, at least to the election, that there was somehow this hope, this belief against the odds that she would, that she had a cape and she was wearing it and she would find a way against insurmountable odds. By gosh, that tiny in stature woman could do it. She needed to do it. And everybody just, the belief and the hope was so strong that I think people were hoping that maybe that could be enough for a little while.
We really had no right to expect that of her. We put everything on her. I don't know. I mean, it's easy to, we could second guess, I suppose, various things. I think in 2014, was it 2014? When did the Democrats have a supermajority?
Oh, you're going to go back? I know
maybe that's going back even.
I'll talk about that.
2009. Well, I mean, you know, it's not to blame her, but I think some people probably should have looked at the situation and said, here's our chance. Nothing against, I mean, obviously she's a firebrand and she did some really great work.
It was brought to her about perhaps retiring from the bench. But at that point, you don't know you're going to get that sick. She'd not gotten a terminal illness. She was still brighter than anybody else. She'd be there and she'd be fine.
Sure, and I'm not saying I feel this way, but you could make an argument.
And you said this was going to be negative, and now here we are again.
I'm so negative. I'm not negative. I'm not positive. How's
today
that?
it's been something.
Well, it's the end of the year. We're cleaning out our files. We're throwing everything out, getting ready for a new one.
Suppose all the drear happens, but I get to choose, recognize it, accept it. But how do I view it?
Well, before we go, I do want to one real quick thing. I want to plug my son's show because he plugged our show last week on.
Oh, that was
yeah, isn't that cool? So to return the favor, I'd like to plug my son Jack has a podcast called Fight Geist, and it streams. It's about to stream. Well, this won't help anybody at home because it won't be Tuesday when you listen to this, but it's Tuesday evenings around 6-ish, around 7-ish is when they start streaming on Twitch. Then sometimes they stream for hours, and then the show proper will be edited and uploaded to all the podcast platforms and YouTube a couple of days later. And if you're wrestling in any way, shape, or form, you will enjoy this show. My son Jack and his friend Phil, and they talk and they argue about wrestling, and you'll love it. It's great.
Absolutely.
Okay. So tell all your friends. Fight Geist.
Fight Geist.
Like Zeitgeist, only fight Geist. I think they understand that. Okay, Mary. Well, hey, all hell's broken loose here, so let's
I gotta go.
Let's get out of here. We'll see you next year.
Oh wow.
Everybody.
Yes. All right.